Everybody, I'm so sorry. Thank you for joining us. It's one of those things, lives are kind of tricky. But thank you so much. Welcome to our Saturday show. We are live, and this week we are live in Trinidad. I'm so excited. I'm going to introduce you to our guests in a moment. But before I introduce you to our guest, let's get a message from our sponsors. All right, welcome back. So today's topic is very interesting. It's a topic that I find very fascinating. It's something that speaks to things that I wanted to do when I was growing up, animation. And but I always felt that when I was in Africa, there was not enough exposure or for us to be able to get involved in it. More so if you're a woman, it's pretty much a male-dominated field. But the person I'm about to introduce you today, our guest, is an expert. She is the person to talk to when you're talking about animation. She's female. She's from Trinidad. And her name is Camille Selvon Ibrahim. Hi.
I'm so excited to speak to you.
Excited. I'm more excited. Welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for this amazing platform. I, as a child growing up in the Caribbean, I felt the same thing, that I wanted to do. I just wanted to draw. I wanted to be creative. I just wanted to do stuff. And, so I know about that feeling.
Yes. You know, the creative side is not explored so much when we are in school, especially. I want to talk about our education system in Africa, which is more British kind of education. It focuses most on academic. Not the creative side. It's teaching you how to read and write. Yes, it's you all this math that I'm probably not even comprehending, but I learn from touch. I learn from seeing. I learn from actually doing something. That's how I learn. I don't learn from reading and from listening to someone speak. I don't learn that way. So I think it creates that gap for us in Africa, but more so for women. This is not a field that is a lot of women. Am I right?
You're absolutely correct. I mean, if I go back to when I decided I was going to study this as a career, like at the university, Goldsmiths in London, I was one of the few female that specialized in animation. And on top of that, I was the few black people in that group of animators that year. And then and on top of that, I was the only Caribbean speaking, the Caribbean accent. So I was 3 times the underdog, if you want to call it that. But certainly when you talk about the education system, I think it's so important that we talk about that because, as you rightly said, people learn differently. So for me, how I learn is I don't like to read. I do not like to read. I read because I have to read.
I thought I was
I'm
weird.
I'm a university lecturer, so I have to read, but I do not like it. But you put symbols in front of me and you put a moving film or somebody fixing it in a YouTube video, I will look at that and I could replicate that, you know. But what the colonial system did was really destroy our traditional way of learning, because we traditionally, that's how we learn too. We learn from our mother in the household. We learn from our father on the field. That's how we learned. We learned by doing. But when in the colonial construct, what it changed to be is that you have someone in charge who is the king of knowledge. And I say king because that's where it was. It was the men, the king of knowledge that you just have to believe, and don't you dare question that. I mean, we would get, and I know you all too would have in Africa, because we went through the same colonial existence, right? You dare question that teacher. Dare question that teacher. And it's not fair. It's not fair, because you're saying that young people who want to be creative and want to express themselves in a different way cannot, because this is the model that we have to exist under. So it's very, very, very destructive.
It is. And so for you as a woman, I'm sure it was even tougher for you to break into this industry. Why do you think it was so? And what are some of the things that you saw that constrained you?
I think it's because we didn't think we belong. And I know that's tough for a lot of people to swallow, because they would want me to say, well, it's a male-dominated society and they didn't want us. No, we did not feel like we belong. I think women are now really getting out of themselves and getting out of the stories that were put into their head, because that's some of the work that I do. I focus on the stories and think about it. Think about, we are being told constantly that we belong in the kitchen, we belong in the bedroom, we belong in the, so we had to break ourselves out of that. We had to break. So the reason for it goes really far back, as in our place in society back then. And then technology in the recent decades obviously came through the male domination, and in between all of that, you had women that were doing some dynamic, fantastic things in digital media, right? But we wouldn't see it. But now that we open up ourselves and give ourselves permission to do what we feel we want to do, now you're seeing that is happening. It's not gotten any easier. Nothing has changed. The people in charge haven't changed. We have taken up the throne and wear it, like this is what we want to do.
Yes. And can animators make a sustainable livelihood from projects that they do? And let's say in places like Africa and the Caribbean?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. And it is one of the things that is like really even just affecting us in society at the moment, because yes, we can. However, there are some challenges, and there's a beast called distribution, right?
Yes.
The distribution model we don't fit into that model, right? Yes. Our stories do not fit into those models. So therefore, we could have amazing stories, like really beautiful, amazing stories. But if this beast of a monster called the distribution model that takes all of the content and put them into the different spaces, whether it be Netflix or Cartoon Network or wherever, we do not fit into that distribution model, then we won't be part of that.
Yes.
So the challenge is now, okay, do we water down our content to fit in those distribution model? I think there's a place for that. I think we
Yes.
can, right? Keep our soul, keep our dignity, and we could do that. And plus, I do feel by doing that, we allow a lot more people to hear our stories. So it's not just
Yes.
us. I do feel like the world need to hear our stories. So that's
Yes.
one. Yes, we can do it that way. But then also, we now have to look at our distribution model. I always look at the Nigeria film industry and think like, good on them. Good on the Nigerians, right?
Yeah.
You took piracy, they took piracy and turned it on its head and
Yes.
made it work for the Nigerian film industry,
Yes.
right? And they started small, and the content was like, oh my God, of course, equality was not there in the beginning, like with anything else. But they created a model that was very unique to them. And that is working for Nigeria right now. And I think the entire diaspora, we have to think like that, that you have this existing monster. I call it the distribution monster. And then you have now where COVID is allowing us, this crazy thing, pandemic, is allowing us to kind of internalize now and come and say, well, okay, terrestrial TV is not working. Young people are not going to buy TVs. They're using their phones. They're using their tablets. Let us figure out a way how we can create our own distribution model. So those are the kind of things that I am doing. So for instance, I'm partnering with Tim Reed, actor director Tim Reed. Those who are my age would know who Tim Reed is.
Yes.
And he has a platform now called Legacy of the People. And we are partnering now to bring in a platform within his network called I Am Network, which is International Anime Media Network, where we take in animations from all over the globe, from Africa, from Cuba, from the Caribbean, that has a very unique story, and it doesn't fit into that. It has to be 22 minutes, or it has to be 11 minutes, and it has to fit in this demographic. It just isn't. So we are now taking that and packaging it for those who really want to see authentic animation from around the world. And when I say from around the world, I don't mean just the African diaspora and the Caribbean. I'm talking, because I host a festival every year, and we get submissions from Russia, from Czechoslovakia, from Palestine, from Cuba, places that would not normally have a platform to show their work. And therefore, by doing this with what I'm doing with Tim, we are creating a distribution model that kind of fits our crazy construct, as Black people, as people of color.
Yes. Now, I wanted to, it kind of went right into the question that I wanted to ask, which really ties up our culture as a people. In the Caribbean, on the continent, the way we tell our stories, the way we interact, how does it play into animation, or even people wanting to do animation and seeing animation as us and not something from them or others?
Right. Oh my God, you're asking such beautiful questions. You're asking questions I want to answer.
Oh my God.
Right? So, I mean, that is so important, right?
Yes.
And the reason why it's important is I do feel that the stories we've been told over time, over centuries, about us not being good enough to fit into a particular space, that is constant. And I feel like it goes through generations. So that trauma goes through generations, that we continue to believe that we don't belong, or we're not supposed to be here. We're not supposed to do animation. We're not supposed to do this. And therefore, we have to change those stories. And one of the most beautiful ways to do that is through animation, because with animation, you can just do anything. You could fly, right? you could create submarines in the waters around Africa. Whereas with film, it's a little more difficult to do that, right? You could create African superheroes. So we now have to look at, time. First of all, we have to give ourselves permission to do this. I keep going back to that.
Yes.
We have to give ourselves, we don't need to ask permission. We need to take permission and say, I am going to do this. That's the first thing, because our distribution link will not be made for us in the distribution monster. That is not going to happen.
No one is coming.
No. And even if it happens, because you're seeing it with Netflix, you're seeing African content coming through Netflix. But who does that content then belong to? And then when you sell your soul to an organization like Netflix, I still like Netflix. I still would want to sell to Netflix.
To sell your soul.
But understand you are selling your soul, right? Because I've heard about the contracts with Netflix, and they're not nice. They're better than the other contracts that used to be, but that tells you how terrible the other contracts were, because Netflix contracts are pretty okay, but they're still not, you're selling your soul. So we have to now kind of claim our stories, first of all, because when you go into those sort of arenas, you have to, again, fit into those spaces. All right. Now, some organizations have done that. Some directors have done that. And there's two in particular I want to talk about. So first of all, Into the Spider-Verse, I don't know if you saw that, right? But that film, directed by a Black director, written by a Black writer, and it took, a Marvel superhero and really broke it down to make, kind of really impact the world to see us differently. I thought that was well done. I thought it was well done. They didn't go as deep, but it was well done. And they treated with even things like the superheroes, the character archetypes, right? So you have all these different archetypes that in the intervention work that I do, I talk about the fact that the traditional archetypes, even that and all, are not us. We have different archetypes. So in spite of it, Into the Spider-Verse, the hero had this uncle that he loved so much. His uncle was totally opposite to his father. So he loves his father and he loved his uncle. And I hope I'm not giving it away to anybody. So whoever didn't see it, I want to go and see it, block your ears. Because I'm going to say it, right?
I mean,
But it's not going to give away too much. But that particular archetype became a villain. But the trauma that the main character had to deal with, that he loved this villain. And these are things we experience in our household, in our community. We have in Trinidad, we have community leaders that are probably drug dealers, but they give to the community. So you love them, but you don't like them. The parents don't want the children to be around them, but there's a survival thing there. That's a character archetype that we don't really see in traditional storytelling, right? And for me, Into the Universe, Spider-Verse, kind of treated with that. And also the main character, Miles, became Spider-Man, which was very unusual. And the purists who believe in, that these things need to be pure probably were under the tables crying, because how dare you put a young Black man in Spider-Man's costume? And that's what it did. But there was a certain moment in the film where he was going through that transformation, and he was still wearing the hoodie and the trainers and the sneakers. So you saw that street person that we know, my sons, my brothers, being transformed into this wonderful superhero. So I think that the Black directors, especially the American Black directors, are kind of going there, but they still can't go there. All right. So that's one film. There's another film, of course, Black Panther. Right? We can't talk about this without talking about Black Panther. But there's a particular...
we cannot. That was a game changer for me.
Right. So with Black Panther, there were many, many layers. And again, it's because we now kind of finding a way to put things in there, that we would connect to. So a simple thing like the natural hair for the woman, that was that created a, right? 22 years of putting disgusting straightener in my hair, and I stopped. And look how beautiful that is. Look how beautiful yours is. So you see how powerful imagery is.
Yes.
we cannot underestimate the power of that. But there was a particular scene in Black Panther that really, I was like, oh my God.
Yes.
That scene was when he met his father, when he sort of crossed into the
when
other,
he crossed into the realm.
right. He crossed the realm and he met his father. But in order
Yes.
to do that, they had to put him underground. And if you know
Yes.
anything about traditional African Orisha, if you know anything about traditional, our traditional African beliefs,
Yes.
that ritual of putting the person underground.
Under the ground and meeting their ancestors.
Right?
Boom! Oh my God!
Right? Now
Yes.
that was done, and that would have gone over 90% of the audience. But those who know will know.
Yes.
Those
yes.
who know will know, you know? And so that was like, wow, we get in there. But we have a long way to go still, because those stories still fit into that traditional story arc myth, and it's called The Hero's Journey, and that's based on Greek mythology.
Yes.
So it's not based on our experience, you know. And my thing is that if we can tell our own stories and be authentic, we need to have our distribution model ready for it to go, because the traditional distribution model, it will take a little while to get there, you know. So it's starting to get there. But could you imagine if we really put a character like a drug dealer in a film and make him a likable person, that people will be like, what madness? What are you saying? What, you know? So do we really want to go so deep like that? Do we want to? I don't know. It will be good to get people's feedback to see what that is. So there's one more thing I want to make a link to Africa and the traditional storytelling to know. So growing up in the Caribbean, coming from Trinidad, we were told about many stories, right? So we had folk characters like the Lagahu and the Laja Bless and the Sukuya and the whatever and the whatever. There are two things, and I need to write down, so because I forget, right? So when I went to Nigeria, it wasn't Nigeria, it was Ghana. I went to Ghana and I visited Kumasi. So I went to the castle and went through that whole thing, which absolutely blew me away. But then I went to the Ashanti village. So I traveled like 8 hours in a bus, squeezed up with so many people, and I went to the Ashanti village, and I took a young lady I met there who said she will go with me. So I didn't go on my own. I wasn't that crazy. So we went to the Ashanti village, and you know, which was absolutely divine. And then I went to Kwame and Nkrumah University.
Yes.
University of Kwame and Nkrumah. And I met a professor in cultural studies, right? I can't remember his name now. And we had a long discussion about that. And when I started talking to him about the Laja Bless and the Lagahu and whatever, he was starting to pull out images of the same characters, just named differently, right? So he was saying, okay, your Lagahu is this. And when I looked at the imagery of what that character looks like, it's like, whoa, this is the same thing, obviously, that passed on. This is not colonial. This came from Africa for us. And the one other character, so that was amazing. We compared a lot of things, and then we compared a character we know in the Caribbean, coming from the Caribbean. Every Caribbean island will know about Anansi. And Anansi is a cultural icon that came through the Atlantic slave trade, came from West Africa, and you know, dropped off with us to the Caribbean, and then went all the way up to America, and even crossed to Europe, because there is Anansi in Russia, right? Believe it or not. So it went all the way around. Now the character of Anansi, there's some interesting comment there about the drug dealer.
Exactly. She's referencing what you were saying.
Yes, I would love to bring that back to hear what she said, right?
Yes.
So with the Anansi, what we were taught in our old colonial construct of the education system that remains today, we were taught that Anansi was a trickster. That's all Anansi was a trickster. It's just, just to cause trouble.
Yes.
But as I started going deeper, and I read up a lot, and then being in Ghana and kind of connecting there, Anansi is an iconic symbolism of our survival.
Yes.
It symbolizes our survival. And in order to do the things to survive in this place that was not designed for us, because it wasn't designed for us. Yes. It was designed for us to support, but it's not designed for us to become, to live. Yeah, it's not. It's just not. You could see it, right?
Yep.
Anansi had to do things to trick his way to survive. Anansi had to, he had to. So in the colonial's eye, this looks like trickery. But yes. Anansi is thinking, I have 5,000 little Anansis to feed. I will do anything in my power.
Can you blame him?
No. Right? And Anansi is also a female too. In some different places is manifested as a female too.
Yes.
So that Anansi character that has gone through the entire system and cross cultures is about our survival.
Yeah.
But we just need to see it differently.
Yeah, beautiful. And I know we jumped right deep into the conversation just when we started talking. I wanted to take us a little back into people understanding who you are, because we didn't even get that opportunity, because we took the conversation right. Yeah, we just dived right in.
Yes.
Before we do that, let me just acknowledge the people that are watching. Thank you so much, Joy. Joy is here. And there is also Jomo.
Oh, Jomo. Hi, Jomo.
Yeah, and there are many other people that I can't see unless they type. They send a message. Fuzi, hi, how are you? They are behind. I can see a lot of people there, but I can't see their names because I can only see right now the ones that are typing in.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But Joy is saying, they do that a lot. They glorify bad boys. They make them seem like they are heroes, not the real heroes. The heroes have to struggle to keep up with the bad boys.
Right. But even the bad boys, there's a place. I'm not worshiping the bad boys. I don't want my son around the bad boys.
Yes.
But for certain communities, there is a place. There's some kind of space why this is happening.
Yes. Yes, because they are the ones who help them.
Yes, and it may sound, and I know a lot of people probably in your audience will be like, how could you,
No,
see that?
No, I understand.
But why is that happening? So first of all, you have to ask, why is it happening? Why is it that this Anansi manifesting? Because this person is obviously has to do some trickery to get things done.
Yeah.
So it's very deep. It's not a simple discussion, because there's that duality of good and bad too that we ourselves as human beings, we struggle with. We struggle with that, that discussion. But regarding me, you were asking to give some background.
So hi Perry, hi Francesca, how are you? Welcome to the show. It's really fascinating. So really, I want people to understand you.
Right.
You are one of the notes that I read when I was trying to get to understand you without talking to you, which is what this digital platform has allowed us to do, is that you can go and listen to someone and hear them talk, and then you end up thinking you know them until you really speak to them and hear them. You call what you do digital activism.
Yes.
I want to understand you and the things that shape you, that formulate you, why you want to fight this monster.
Right.
To tell your story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, digital activism is a word I coined on my own because I couldn't find a space that I couldn't find a word that explained what I do. So I am in academia. I'm a
Yes.
lecturer at the University of Trinidad and Tobago.
Mm-hmm.
I studied, animation, got my qualifications, did media and communications, did cultural studies, and I'm studying.
Yes.
I'm teaching at the University in Trinidad and Tobago. However, what I felt, even when I was in London studying, I
Yeah.
felt that even me speaking in my own voice, I had to struggle with that,
Yes.
right? So I would not speak as much unless you know, somebody asked me something because of that whole thing of having a different voice being not good enough, right?
Uh,
A lot of our young people are going through that, right? And especially if you take them out of the Caribbean and put them into America or put them into London, they internalize that. We don't recognize that, but they do, right?
yeah.
It's changing a little bit now, but it does impact who you are. So what I found was even in at Goldsmiths University, I had that issue of kind of like, oh my God, my experience as a colonized human being growing up in Trinidad and Tobago, coming under the British system, coming back into London, and then having to express myself with this. That wasn't good enough for me. I felt like, no, I need to be authentic. I need to do this authentic, even if it means that by me using my voice, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to probably, kind of not get me as far as other people. So I deliberately created my final animation using a Trinidadian accent. I deliberately did it.
So I was trying to figure that out. That are you talking about moving from the Caribbean and going into the UK, and you have a different accent?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Now,
even your voice, like, and meaning that what your culture is
yes.
different. How I speak, how I laugh, how I use my hands. I may laugh loud, and
Yeah. Yeah.
we laugh loud. But in London,
we
you there,
do. We
you
laugh from the soul.
right. So you in a bus and you laugh out loud, and people will be like, "Who is this person?" Right. So
Yes.
you have to tame yourself. So that really impacted me. So I did the film, and um, I did a film and then used a local voice, a Caribbean voice, and it went on and it won the Royal Television Society
Oh,
Award
beautiful.
for London, and I was invited to many different platforms. And in those places, I was the only female, I was the only Black person, I was the only Caribbean person, I was the only person with same thing we spoke about. But there
Yes.
was one particular incident when I was at Trafalgar Square, the Canadian High Commission, and they showed my film. And a
Yes.
British lady came to me after, and she said, "Young lady, my head was down, and
Yes.
I heard your film, and I had to look up, and she may think that would have been simple, but for me, it's like if my voice was not unique, she would not have looked up. She
Yes.
would have continued
Yes.
reading, and
Doing
that is
whatever.
right. And that
Yeah.
is how I had to show my students, that you need to have your authentic voice in there. You
Yeah.
might be scared. You might be, like a little bit, you're not too sure, but put your authentic voice in there, because when you do that, that's when people listen. Because you're doing something different. So that's one. The other thing I noticed was that, again, because of our colonial upbringing,
Yes.
there is social injustice even in the Caribbean. Of course, there is social injustice in the UK and America, all over the world. But we do
Yes.
have social injustice in the Caribbean too. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember deliberately trying to get into the prisons, yeah,
Yeah.
because I felt like there could be rehabilitation for young men, especially men, because
Mm-hmm.
those are where the numbers are. If we probably try a different approach,
Mm-hmm.
right? Try to get them to express themselves rather than to not express themselves. So I did intervention workshops in the prisons in Trinidad, where I
Mm-hmm.
used the whole storytelling thing to get these young men to talk about their experiences and kind of turn it around in a hopeful way.
Mm.
So I mean, when I first started it, the stories were like, yeah, I got abused, or I got beaten up, and and then getting them to understand that, but then to build a story that had a good ending, that had a positive ending, so that happened. And then when that happened, I got called through the Organization of American States in Washington DC to do some workshops in Jamaica, doing the same thing, doing the same thing. But what happened to me in Jamaica that really kind of pushed me to push the education and education reform, because that's what needs to happen, was my experience in South Camp for Girls, where I was doing the intervention workshop with young women. And during the workshop, there was this one particular young lady that was just like so excited to do this, she was like wanted to finish. She was the last person to leave for my last day. So my last day, she remained, and I said, you need to really finish, because the time is up and I have to leave to go back to Trinidad. And she turned to me and she said, Miss, I really, really want to do this. I really want to do this. How can you help me to do this? And that moment was like, how can I help her? How she's in 4 walls in a prison. I'm in Trinidad. She's in Jamaica. I don't know when she comes out of here, what happens.
What happens to her?
Yeah. So we have so much work to do. We have so much work to do. And a lot of it is about sort of disrupting the stories in our head. That was, there's a centuries of stories, that if we disrupt those stories for that same young woman and say, listen, you're beautiful. You are beautiful. Do an animation of how beautiful your hair is. That alone, that experience of her telling a story about her beautiful magical hair. This hair creates, zaps and changes the flower,
Yeah. Can we have a hero like that? Can we have a heroine like that in animation form who can change her hair? And each time she changes her hair, it's different power.
Exactly. So can you imagine if our children were shown that from young?
Yeah.
And that black skin is beautiful, and that we don't have to have it vanilla.
No.
Lupita is doing
all chocolates, all different chocolates.
Lupita is doing a wonderful thing with her books, Sulwe, I think it's called, where the little girl in the book is black. No vanilla color hair, black and beautiful. So could you imagine if we exposed our children to these things from young? You would not have a drug dealer, because then everybody will believe in themselves. Everybody will believe that they're beautiful, and everybody will believe that they're worthy.
Yes.
And it may seem simplistic, but I strongly believe that this platform is one of the most powerful platforms to disrupt the stories that were put in our heads from generations ago. I really, really honestly believe that.
Yes, true. And there's this idea of Pan-Africanism, right? All across. What role do you think animation can play, and can it contribute to spreading that pride?
Absolutely. So the third thing that I wrote down, because I knew I would have forgotten, will fit into this. So for me, the powerful tool. So someone is saying imposter syndrome, questioning ourselves. Absolutely. That is a big part of it, because if it's pound in your head that you're not beautiful, you would grow up thinking you're not beautiful. So what you're talking about the Pan-Africanism, that is like critical for our survival, I think, especially now, where I think things could go both ways. In Trinidad, what we're finding is that a lot of people are finding their creativity. So now you have markets with amazing products, all over. So with COVID, it allows us to kind of internalize, and we have to look at the diaspora. And I say it, and I say this to Tim and all my other people. I said this to the person who I'm going to talk about. His name is Sidney Combo. I said to him, we have to use the triangle that was used to displace us. We have to turn it on its head and reconnect with it. So use the same triangle, turn it on its head and reconnect. And the diaspora, when it comes to animation, digital media, anything like that, is extremely important. So I met this one guy called Sidney Combo online some years ago. And I read up on him, and I wanted him to come to Anime Carib, my festival this year.
Yes.
And of course, he couldn't come because of COVID, but I still had him talk. Sidney Combo was born in Congo. Grew up in the Congo. Grew up, spent 17 years there. And left, and I'm not too sure if he went to Europe or if he went to London, but he left the Congo at the age of 17. Loved animation so much, like really, really loved animation so much. Just worked himself up into becoming one of the top animators in the world. So if you know of any of the Avengers films, Endgame, Avengers, you know, you talk about Planet of the Apes, you talk... Sidney Combo, who came from the Congo, is one of the most important people in that.
Wow.
Would you have known that?
No, not at all, because it's never going to be highlighted.
Because in other circles, it's not important. It's just, you know. But for us, it's important. And my question when I had the interview with Sidney, because he came online for Anime Carib, was, would you ever consider going back home? And his response to me was very simple. It was, that's what I'm doing now. So there are a lot of people in the diaspora who are thinking that way. It's just that we have to find a way to make it easy, because it's not going to be easy for those kind of people to come back. We have
support.
We have to create a safety net. We have to create that on Nancy Webb put it, so that, you know, when they land, it's not hard, because you know our society, our culture, we are damaged. I'm not, you know, we are damaged. And therefore, when it comes to politics and our egos, they would see someone like Sidney Combo coming back to Congo and was like, why? Well, you know, they will make it hard for him. So it's a game that both the diaspora have to play with the people on the ground who are willing to create those safety nets. And we definitely will see that in the future.
Yeah. You know, while we're talking of all this, your journey into Ghana and all these, the role that animation can play. Immediately my thoughts were, because I'm a creative person and I go deep end. I just thought, wouldn't it be beautiful if we had animation stories of the journey of the slavery period, being told in our own way? We have enough stories of the ones who
made it
and survived.
Toussaint Louverture is a good example of what kind of superheroes we can have. Toussaint Louverture in Haiti, what happened in Haiti? You know, what happened in Cuba, what happened in Brazil. I mean, Brazil, if you know, Brazil, I don't know if you know, but there's a huge African group of people in Brazil and Cuba. Did you know that?
Yes.
Right? Huge. So those stories, could you imagine what kind of stories are in there? So yes.
So hold on. Someone says I have an echo. I need to put on my earphones, I think. I'm beginning to have feedback.
All right.
Give me 1 second. Okay. Hi.
Yes.
Do I still have feedback? Joy, let me know if I still have feedback. Okay. Yeah. So, whose responsibility is that to create those stories? Our own heroes, especially in Africa.
It's ours. And that's where the not asking for permission needs to happen. It's ours, because, you know, the fear will be, oh, nobody will buy into that. Nobody will buy into that. Look what happened with Black Panther, it took them, so long to try it because the idea was that nobody's going to buy into that. Look what happened. So we have to give ourselves permission to do that. The diaspora, the ones who know how to do it, need to do that. The investors need to invest in it because, obviously you would have to have a pool of people that are, that are qualified. You don't want mediocrity when you're going to fight this battle. You don't want any excuse for anybody to say, well, you see, we told you so. You can't do this. You don't have the money to do it. You don't have the stories to do it. We don't want that. So you want to invest in it. You want to have the superpowers out there, because I could immediately pull up 10 people from the diaspora that can make one of the top films in the world right now. I could connect to those people right now if you have that support system. Now, something I noticed, Savannah, was that I got a document called the what was it? It's a document talking about, it came from Africa, and it's a document talking about the diaspora being considered the next African state. Have you heard about that?
No, but we in Zimbabwe we always talk about us Zimbabweans in the diaspora as a constituency. You know what I mean? Right.
So could you imagine if you do that to the globe? You're talking adding 1 billion people to the 1 point something billion already. How many is it in Africa? 1.2 billion? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
I think it's just under. It's under China for sure, but it's like I think it's about 1.2 billion. But can you imagine adding the diaspora to that? I mean, that alone is power in itself.
Yes.
That alone, the numbers,
I
So if it has something to do with the African Union, where they were saying, and I have the document, I could probably share it offline with you, where they were talking about the diaspora is going to be considered the last state of Africa where we will be given passports, where we could interact with but those are the kind of things that need to happen.
We need to stop talking. It needs to be done.
Yeah, because if that happens, oh my God, there's no stopping, right?
Yeah,
there's no stopping.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back. And when we come back, let's go and talk about how this the journey that you took, because we really didn't talk much about it. The journey that you took when you first left home, went into uncharted waters where you felt you were not at home at all.
Yeah,
we want to talk about those things.
Okay.
All right. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Let me just, Joyce says we have 1.2 billion.
1.2, yes.
Plus, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yes.
That's
That's
power.
That's power.
That's power.
Yeah.
That's 2.4 billion eyes.
Yes.
That will want to see our own stories. You can't tell me we wouldn't want to see our own stories, you know?
No, we do. And we consume a lot of other people's stuff. So I saw how the other world has started consuming Nigerian movies, as you were saying. And look at this, they are not called Nigerian movies anymore, they're called African movies. That's how powerful they are.
Yep.
Now, let's go back to your journey, your first journey. How old were you when you left and you were going to...
I was 22 when I left. So yes, to London. I was. I always knew that I wanted to, you know, we didn't have animation or those kind of things to study in Trinidad at that point. So I always knew I wanted to go and study in that field, and I did. I also, you know, I went to meet my husband because we had met in Trinidad, and then he lives in London. So I went there for that too, but with the knowledge that I'm going to study. And I entered Goldsmiths University. That's a whole story in itself. Now, Goldsmiths University really opened my eyes. I really give thanks to that university. I do, because it opened my eyes. You know, it was the first time that I read Franz Fanon. And if anybody knows who Franz Fanon is, read his books, because they are very, very impactful now. So he was born in Martinique, I think, and then went to Europe, because Martinique is like a little France. And he's a cultural critic and a historian. I read his books. I read some of my own people in the Caribbean books. And it really opened me up to really critiquing culture. So that experience, and then the experience with my film, that is where I felt, do I come back home? Do I come back home now? Because, you know, I could stay there and be part of that big thing, that I'll be a drop in the bucket. But I decided I'm coming back home. And as I said to you, I think we spoke about it earlier, home, to me, home doesn't mean, okay, I was born in Trinidad, therefore home is Trinidad. For me, home is like Ghana. When I went to Ghana, I felt home. I was like, this is like home. You look like my cousin. I have some Jamaican friends who look like those guys in Nigeria. They have the same face, so they're like family. So being home is like that. So I decided I was going to come back home. And coming back home was the most challenging thing, because you're coming back to old colonial constructs. You're coming back to this space where, you know, the education system is blah, blah, blah. You're coming back to where the oil is being siphoned off the country with big business. And when you mention animation, they're like, animation, oil. Wait, oil is up there. Animation is down here, you know, banks don't want to hear you. So it really was a challenge. So one of the ways that I kind of worked through that was to create a festival. I created Anime Career Festival 20 years ago to make people aware of the power of animation. And I did it in a way, Black Skin, White Mask. Yes, Francisca, yes. That is one of the books. So the festival was to create that awareness, and I did. And it's been going on since. It's celebrating 20 years. And from that, because of the interest by young people, I was able to kind of, through a long winding story, get it into the university. So we started with a diploma in 2008. And now we have a BFA in Digital Media Arts. Wretched of the Earth is my favorite, from Franz Fanon. It's my favorite. If you don't want to read the whole book, read the chapter on culture. That is a good one. And then, of course, with the education system, it eventually, we had a BFA in Digital Media Arts. Now, the challenge with that is that, again, the system is designed in such a way based on, as you had mentioned, based on, you know, the maths and the English, and even the way we teach. The teacher stands in front of the class and tells the class what to do. And this kind of format is not that. This is about expressing themselves and, you know, stepping outside of the box and dealing with color when it comes to characters. I did a TED talk the other day about this, and it was about, you know, the story I'm going to share again, where I did a session with the students, and I said, right, do an animated character of yourself. Let's see what that looked like, you know, let's see how you look animated. And a lot of them, the tone of their skin absolutely was not what I was seeing. It was pink. right? So you had
Yes.
pink skin, and some of them even went as far as having blue eyes. And I you know, and that told me that there's some internal things going on there of self-hate
Yes.
that we need to deal with. And if it means that I use animation to do that,
Yes.
that's what I would do. I would turn that whole thing on its head. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where we are now. So now we are looking at, you know, obviously creating the content that is needed for the world.
Yeah, because I was really going to ask you, how do you see animation, or what is animation's role in social change? Where we have all these issues, be they be political or just the fact that we as a people have a love and hate relationship with ourselves.
Yes, yeah. And I think it's as simple as that. It's like starting to look at ourselves and loving who we are, you know, creating characters that have hair like mine and yours, you know.
Yeah.
Creating characters that have skin tones that are beautiful.
Yes.
Creating stories that are reflected of our experience. And that could be funny stories, it could be sad stories, but it also could be historical stories, because our stories are not told correctly. They're lies.
Yes.
They're lies. So we could talk about Toussaint Louverture in Haiti. He's seen as a villain who was, you know, whatever. We know differently. We know why he did that. Even in Zimbabwe, you know, there's stories that are out there that are like really horrific. There's stories in this Marcus Garvey from Jamaica. He was made to look like a fool, whereas he was one of the most modern thinking businessman, probably better than most businessmen at those times. But he was made to look like a fool. You know, so we have to retell those stories. We have to tell the truth, because the truth is not being told about who we are.
We have about 4 minutes left to this conversation, because we usually like to keep it an hour so that people can really contain it. But I feel like we haven't even started this conversation.
Yeah, it's
There's
a lot.
so much we haven't even talked about.
Yeah.
We, you know, I have an idea. I spoke to another brilliant woman that I would love to have a conversation with both of you, if possible, you know. But we can talk about that and maybe continue this conversation, because it all ties in with you're both brilliant women, experts in what you do. We don't hear a lot. We don't hear a lot of women speaking in their own voices, challenging what's out there. And it's something that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah. Well, I would come back anytime you ask me. That's not a problem at all.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, as we close in, what do you want the viewers to go with from you?
Oh, gosh, so much. But understand. I think people need to understand. I keep going back to these stories, right?
Yes.
That these stories are embedded in our cells.
Yes.
I feel like it's been passed down. So like now as an adult, I look back at certain things my mother did that I do. And it's not that she has a mole on top of her head. It's no, she may do certain things that I repeat. So what is that? It means that these actions are passed on. So if you go all the way back, and people don't like to go into the belly of the wheel, like in script writing, I call it the belly of the wheel, right? Yes. I call it the belly of the wheel. It's that moment when the character really has to make a choice to live or to die, or to jump over or to not jump over. Yes. And I do feel that, you know, if we step back into the belly of the wheel, even during that moment when we were dehumanized, and we had to make a choice, do I become what the master is telling me to do, which is a slave, or do I just get beaten and just stand up to him? Yes. What do I do? Right? Yes. And that has impacted us. That has impacted us through generations and generations. Yes. And to break that mold, that storytelling mold, animation is not going to do it. You know, I don't want people to think that animation is going to save the world. It's not.
Yeah.
But it will start to allow us to kind of see ourselves, see the beauty of this beautiful hair, see the beauty of our black skin, hear our voices, and not feel that somebody talking in a Trini accent is not normal. That's because you don't see it in the traditional model. You don't see it in the traditional. So we now have to kind of not ask permission anymore to love ourselves and to appreciate ourselves, and to also kind of express those stories in many different ways, in music, in art, in animation, in all the different methodologies. We need to express those new stories so that we could impact the future and also change the mindset of the young generation. If we break that, we can't break it with the next generation. Whereas we have to work with that, we have to kind of like take the decades of pulling it out of us. That with the children that are coming up, you could break it. You could break it.
Yes. Thank you so much. And I don't think there's anything else to add from there. I feel we have to invite you back. Hopefully we will have the other lady. She's a professor as well at some university here. But it's thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for affording me this opportunity to just sit here and have a conversation as women from Africa. Creative side and express that we don't want to be taken into academics the way they are. That's not, I don't understand it that way. But I do understand it in a creative form, whichever way that is, be it broadcast, be it animation, be it any storytelling. For me, this is storytelling that we're doing right now. And this is how I know how to do it. And I just want to be able to do that. But you're right. There's not much support out there for us. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. Joy, thank you so much for staying with us the whole entire time. Francesca, St. Charles Mashika from heaven, thank you so much. Jomo Mufudzi. I can only see the names of the people who are typing, but Perry. Oh, Perry, thank you so much. I know there are so many other people out there who have been watching. The conversations are hard, they're difficult, it's not easy it's not a lot of people who come here and listen to this conversation, but if you know someone who's interested in this kind of conversation, please share this conversation, share the page, so that we are able to do more. The more you guys share, the more we are able to do it, the more you participate, the more we can actually do this. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.